I don't know that humans, until all of us become very comfortable speaking to a pure AI voice, you're going to always need some kind of agents to do something. Humans, in my opinion, I would say take risks in your work when you're young. Look at what you're looking for, and as you expand, look for that specialization. But don't be afraid to take on things and fail. If I have 100 people and I can have 100 voice agents that don't ever need to be trained, that don't ever take a day off, that don't ever need a vacation, it's whatever. What's the reality of that? That sounds really cool. There's also unintended consequences that come with all of these things. And those are the kind of things that give you.
Hey, contact center, customer experience friends. Welcome back to another episode of Contact Center Journeys. I'm thrilled to welcome my guest today, Tyler Orrell. Tyler is a proven operations and contact center leader with a track record of driving results. He excels at strategic planning, vendor management, and executing high-stakes business strategies, whether building onshore, nearshore, or offshore teams that handle critical time and revenue-sensitive operations. He's an executive level thinker who can also make fast tactical calls in fast moving environments, always process focused, people first, and obsessed with better outcomes. Welcome to the pod, Tyler.
Hey, Fred, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me here. And that was a nice intro. Wonder if I wrote that. I can't remember, but
you did.
Yeah,
and I appreciate it. I might have condensed. Oftentimes I have to condense those down that I get a little bit, but those are yours.
Right.
So as always, the intent of Contact Center Journeys is to inspire the next generation of CX and contact center professionals. We do this through sharing stories of the industry. A lot of people think that contact center customer experience jobs are dead-end jobs. It's absolutely not true. We personally have all met executives. I myself, a CEO and software executive that started as an agent. But we all know stories of people in this industry that truly started from the ground level. The boiler room or the mail room, whatever story, depending on your age. It absolutely holds true that this is an amazing sector to be able to grow a career in. So there's never any pitches on Contact Center Journeys. We're not here to sell you anything. We just want to tell you the stories and inspire those that are coming up. So Contact Center Journeys is free to use. Please feel free to clip, use it, share it with your agents. I've had stories of leaders sharing it out, letting their agents hear about this stuff because it does give a really good, story behind the individuals that come on as guests who have grown up in this industry. All we ever ask is that you tag us, go see us on YouTube, follow us, subscribe, and of course, follow us and our guests on LinkedIn, which will be on the channels. You'll also find Tyler's link to his LinkedIn to follow him. So without further ado, how the heck did you get into this crazy world of content?
Yeah. I'll just say by chance is really where it all started for me. So most of my pre kind of corporate adult work was tied up in some kind of sales, and I worked in different sales capacities, whether it's selling. I'll date myself, selling PCs or systems, or there's time where I sold golf equipment and things of that nature. And I was looking for something different. So I went to this random job fair and walked around this job fair. I'd never done that before. So I went to a job fair. I guess I was youngish. I don't remember when that was, but came across a company that Nationwide Insurance was there. And this was in Portland, Oregon. And they're like, yeah, hey, this is what we do. We sell property and casualty insurance. We're a contact center. kind of was a contact center space. It was in like the late 90s. So I'll date myself again. I'm like, cool, that sounds good. And so I gave my information, we exchanged details, and they reached out. And the hitch was, you can be a licensed insurance agent working in the contact center. It really wasn't a contact center per se. It was just more, it had grown, kind of become what we would call a contact center. And you had to get licensed. And they said, yeah, we cover all that. And you have 2 weeks of intensive training at one of the licensing schools. And once you're done with that, you come back and then you go take this test with the state of Oregon. And if you pass, then you're in. You can be an insurance agent and you'll work here. If you don't pass, you're out. And I'm working in a normal job, regular job, right? So I'm like, oh wow, this is interesting. So I have to make a bet on myself here. Long story short, I did, passed it. Different longer stories, had to pass it twice over the course of my career with Nationwide for whatever reason or not. I'll talk about it later. And I started as a sales agent in property and casualty insurance in their contact center in the regional office. And so I was an agent on the phone and had a pretty decent, I would say, decent system in terms of flowing through a call that would give a help us get to a quote. And all these were back in a day where consumers would fill out rate quote cards and they would send them in.
Oh yeah.
And they would have like, hey, do you have your card? What was your code? You type in the code on the card so you knew where it was. It's like pretty old school, I should say. There was no real QA. There was some call recording that you had a little device at your desk and you recorded it on a tape machine, I think is what it was. And there was no like workforce planning. Someone just said, hey, we have these hours, so it was in a day where it was very different. Amazing start and company, amazing time out of the gate there. I did that for about a year and a half as an agent. And I got an opportunity to, the company was going to open up a new sales call center in another city in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. And they needed some experienced agent to help them as SME, subject matter experts. And I wasn't married at that point, was engaged, but I wasn't married. And that there was just us. And so I was like, sure, I'm in. Like, let's do it. So for 4 months, I went, and every other week I flew back home for the weekend. But I was down staying in the center that they opened up from scratch. It was like everybody got hired for that at that point. It wasn't like they purchased a product or something.
Right.
And me and a few other people, and maybe some of those other folks, they remember this too. So we're on LinkedIn together, so they might catch this or they forward it to them. And it was a pretty awesome experience. I have to say, I was in my 20s, and we just it was like, I think the office hours were like 14 hours. So we split it up between the three of us over the course of 7 days too. So we were spending a lot of time training and coaching and helping and doing that. It got me not only out of like as an agent on the floor doing my work, but I also got into helping support new people. It wasn't really necessarily training. It was more around coaching and developing new people. And you think, wow, a year and a half, that's not too much time. But yeah, when you're taking call after call in the call center and you're doing this sales and, and especially if you're in sales, you kind of know it's like fun. I mean, it's fun because you just talk to people and you get to, help them, especially in that PNC product. You're helping them find a different product that back then within that company. Insurance is a promise, right? You're not buying a product, you're buying a promise for later if you need it. So I was really engaged. The culture was awesome. We were down there for 4 months. It was pretty exciting. I had a good time. Did a lot of fun, crazy stuff when we were down there. And when I came back, that ended. And when I came back, I took on a role as supervisor in doing some supervision work, support work, and an opportunity came up to work in an area that was kind of newish. Um, it was a business analyst role, but it was really like the starting of like a workforce management. And I worked with one of my colleagues there, name's Judy. Still to this day, probably my best mentor and still a great friend of mine. She's amazing. She reached out and said, "Hey, how this is an opportunity." Talked to one of the other people in the center, one of the managers. "Do you know anybody like this? Yeah, you check out Tyler." And I didn't really think about like business analyst work back then. I was doing a lot of sales and stuff like that. But then I was looking at it and I interviewed for it and got the role. Um, and that was working with, I'm not kidding, access databases for workforce management, Excel spreadsheets, and
Oh yeah.
without knowing exactly what I was doing in that either, just learning it on the fly and uh, putting something in place that hadn't been in place before, developing a vacation planning tool for the agents to run the floor because now it was becoming more and more volume. And so we needed something to do, right? And so to manage from a time off perspective, you couldn't just like, hey, I'm going to take tomorrow off. It just created some problems. And then the opportunity came up at that time. Some things happened, some corporate shifting of resources, and I wasn't affected by that reduction. But I was left as one of the only people in that department. So it was kind of like, hey, you're still going to do these things, me and a couple other people. And at the same time, we were looking at a product called IEX. I'm going to take you way back.
Right.
And a couple of them, actually, a Blue Pumpkin was one of them too. We were looking at. This is pre-acquisition for those guys. Lo and behold, we chose IEX, and so I got to be involved in implementation of this tool and learning this tool and putting it into a contact center space that's not only in my regional office, but ended up being in a couple other offices nationally. And that kind of transformed into creating a team, a workforce team of pulling in people to help with call forecasting and scheduling and long-term, short-term planning and things like that.
Right.
Working with other people in other areas about, hey, we're going to send out, 100,000 mailers. What's that going to do to our calls? I'm like, I don't know. Where's the data? Let's take a look at that. And on what data? So we're those kind of days. But it was awesome because the people were amazing. And that developed into a pretty large scale team of people that, we start at the end of the whole conversation, we're supporting 5 regional centers for the PNC division, have worked on an enterprise level implementation of that workforce platform across like the financial products and also the claims products. So that gave a lot of different perspective on there. And it grew, and there was other leaders that came in, worked out, as part of like the executive team that I reported up to, and had some amazing time learning that. Like that was one of the most fun roles I've ever had because I love just like starting from nothing. Like there was nothing there. And it's like, scratch it out yourself, figure it out. And then bringing the product to bear. And then it worked, like there was a lot of culture shift in that. You went from having no like workforce management to implementing a workforce management tool. It's like, this is called real-time adherence. People are like, what is that? This is how it works. And like, oh my gosh. Yeah, no one would sit with me at lunch. And so, that was part of it. And then that went on for about, I think I was in that role for about 5 years. And there was an opportunity came up that was the company split out their service and sales organization, and they wanted a sales centric organization. and they moved the service and sales out, but they needed new leadership in that area. And I was, that was kind of my roots coming back to that. So
Yeah.
after giving it some thought, I say, I'm going to do this. Not a lot of people there knew me for that, right? But it ended up working out. I interviewed and got that position, working with some of the same people, but the folks that split between sales and service. So there's just different people that work in sales versus service, um, and created something from scratch too. There was no sales organization. It was you're calling mainly about your auto policy or your home policy or your toys or whatever. And you might do a cross sell on something, or you might get a small amount of sales that came in through, like I said, the direct mail product. This out to the company focused on sales, like that part of sales. So my responsibility is over the sales part, and at the beginning was also some of the sales retention, and there was also an agency presence, and so I managed that piece as well with the team. And then over the time, it got large enough within that we hired new leaders under that as kind of peer groups and such. And I stayed in the sales side, and that was pretty exciting. I did that for about 5 years, but that was also an amazing group of people where that was really where I cut my teeth on like operations leadership in the contact center space and the engagement component, all the work. I mean, it's the sales, it was commission plans. You have licensed insurance agents selling to consumers, and you're doing that, but you're also working with some high quality sales agents, in a call center, inbound. It's all inbound, and so these are really solid people, and we grew that into a pretty sizable organization across, like I said, multiple centers in the U.S. And I was just one of those centers, working with the leadership. Judy was involved in that too over time. So she popped her head back up, and I worked for her for a while, and uh, it was a time where I learned that the contact center leadership is really what I wanted to do. The
Yeah.
support structure was important. I think for me in that role was you have to understand those operations support teams
Yeah.
and what they do and the value add they bring, or um, shared services models of where you're working with folks that are in a servicing organization of those products to really be effective leader within the contact center from my experience. And just had a ball like doing that. I saw it grow from, I don't know, I started as like 20, 25 sales agents. I mean, it was 100 and something when it wrapped up, just in our regional site, right? Pretty awesome stuff. And I got to see how the company expanded some of their tools and things of that nature. And, I worked a lot closely with the people that I worked with in my prior role within workforce management. And what was cool was having to know all the ins and outs of those ways they approach things. And so how you could apply that in your operations side. From an operations, even now today, my operations teams, I make sure that they understand those components of running contact center. You have to know why a director of workforce management needs you to do these things.
Yeah.
And then those people on the workforce management side need to understand why the contact center needs to do certain things too that don't always fit in with, yeah, but you have to have this many people doing it at this time and blah, blah, blah. We all have different goals sometimes, but at the highest aggregate level, we're all focused on the same thing. So anyway, long story short, that ended up being pretty amazing at Nationwide. And some things changed, and I felt like the time was right for me. That was 13 years I spent at that company, and started my career there. Raised a lot of my family was young during that time, and I just felt like I needed a new shift. So I wanted to work for a company that was based out of my local area. is what I wanted. And a good friend of mine who used to be at Nationwide reached out and said, "Hey, there's just a cool job that just got posted on our job board. It was director of workforce management here at a company called The Standard out in Portland, Oregon." And I'm like, "Oh, interesting timing." So I checked into it, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." They had 7 contact centers here in Portland. They weren't like they're not large; they're smallish. Disability insurance, financial planning, things like that. And they were looking for someone to come in, and their leader had come in and said, "We need to do some stuff around bringing a contact center together." That's how, and I ended up going over there and took that role, helped them stand up a workforce product, helped them stand up, took eventually over time training and quality, implemented some voice of customer product, natural language IVR using a product called Nuance at one point. And then that was pretty awesome. Went from, I mean, one of the biggest, I would say it's pretty cool to like put a new tool in place and implement. Those are fun to do, but you got vendors who can help you with that. The coolest thing we did was voice of customer. We went from end of call surveys of like 1/8 of 1% or something, 1/10 of 1%. I don't remember. It's so small. It was like non-meaningful to like 12%. It was and the volume was huge. And the data that came out of that was very actionable for the operations and leadership teams. And it was pretty cool. The team that was involved with that was great because it was like this little bolt-on product that was part of the WFO platform. We're like, how do we unlock this thing? Let's figure this out. So we got it all done. I did that for a period of time over the course of, I think, about 3 years, and that was kind of the role that they needed. And so I was looking for something different to transition to, and I that was a support role. So I went backwards into a support role, even though I realized, oh, this is what I really wanted to do. I just felt like that was a good move at that moment. And I saw a posting on LinkedIn, of all things, for a company called Quinn Street that was looking for an operations leader, director of operations, for their contact center out in the Beaverton operation. I was like, that looks pretty cool. I looked into him a little bit, and I said, sure. I'm in LinkedIn. I pinged him, and I said, yeah, I'm interested in this. Here's my resume and all that stuff. Funny story about that is I got a response back from one of the recruiters, said, "Hey, you're just really not qualified for this role." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's interesting."
Right.
And I kind of almost just kind of brushed it aside and said, "Oh, well, I guess that's meant to be, right?" That's how I kind of deal with stuff a lot of times. And I said, I'm going to just respond and be like, "Well, what are you looking for then?" I'd be curious, like, what if my background and skill set of what I've been doing, and when I look at your job description, what did that look like? And the recruiter's like, "Oh man, we sent you the wrong form. It's supposed to be the other form that we want to talk to you." Long story short, we got hired for that role, not because of that, but a lot of long time going on that. That took a while. Where I took that on and started work for a company, Quinn Street, a publicly traded online digital marketing company based out of the Bay Area, and running their contact center out in our Beaverton office, and doing telemarketing, basically. I don't really like that term, but it's outbound contact to consumers who are interested in products. They were interested in financial products, business to business products that they had said, "Hey, I want some online. I want some support in." And that was my first. That was my first foray into kind of the outbound world, because that was pretty heavy outbound by 95%.
Right.
And then also insourced outsource work. So that's a weird way to put it, I guess, but working with staffing agencies to support the contact center versus direct agents. So that was a unique experience. Work with some amazing people at some really great companies, helping provide staff. We had a significant amount of floor space dedicated to these endeavors. A lot of people. Pretty decent size, I'd say mid-sized contact center headcount. And, it was great because I got back into operation stuff. I was in basically, here's the reins to this thing and go grow it. And it went 4x in the first year, in terms of staff count, to the point where we didn't have space where we were at, ran out of space, and it was a sizable business floor space. Uh, and there was a lot with that. But then there, just different things transpired during that time, and that was my start with Quinn Street, and I got an opportunity to really also help bring on some new tech products for contact center. The contact center wasn't really there wasn't a lot of experience with that. So Quinn Street is like I said, digital marketing company, which is online domains where they're purchasing and creating those domains. And sometimes with the companies that would be acquired, they might have a call center. And that's what ended up happening. They acquired a company in a home services space or something, I believe what it was. And they had a small center, and then they were growing that, and they needed to expand that and grow that into some other verticals, call them verticals like auto insurance or education or B2B, whatnot. And so that expanded, considerably, and, just did that for many, multiple years up to, from I think 2013 to 2020, and different campaigns, different verticals. Some changed, some didn't. Some products we were in, we got out of. But at the end of the day, the structure always the same. It's a contact center, right? And there wasn't, like I said, there was just not contact center knowledge in the teams, and so it was like a blank page. I could just work with our teams and divisions to build and grow and use best practices, social experiments on things. It was, I call them social experiments, things like, hey, let's try this or let's try that, see how that affects people. And and those end up sometimes good, sometimes bad. But, at the end of the day, the goal was always to, achieve the goals that the company had placed, and then, distill those down into the business at the contact center. Because I was in the contact center, you have to, the agent is the friction point with the customer. They're the ones talking to the people who are generating policies or generating income or whatever. So you have to figure out a way to take company goals, tie them into, like, why am I taking this call, and how does that play into what the company does, and how I can help the company hit its goals. And then COVID hit, and so at that point, we were all in office, and in March of 2020, it was like, hey, we need everybody to be remote, and so we did that, and that was pretty heavy lift from a technical side of things for our organization, for the contact center, sending everybody home. We had had some outsourced work happening already, but nothing like hub and spoke around the local area. And we just expanded that outsourcing piece at that point, just because the tech on it was a little bulkier and able to maintain it and be able to grow it during that time. And there was less restrictions in certain locations during COVID during that time. And so at that point, we're talking about running the contact center remotely during COVID, just like anybody who's running contact centers had to do during COVID. They had to figure out a way to stand your operation up in an environment that you weren't used to, no one was really used to, and still hit the goals. And some of the products that we were in were very meaningful during that time. They were very financial products and such, and so there was a lot of expansion during that time, which is really amazing. So it gave me opportunity too to try different nearshore stuff, different options, offshore, and getting into that world. Even though we've been doing it, it was a much larger take on it. So And so during that time, over the last 5 years or so, there's been on not only running the day-to-day ops of our we call internal center. There were some acquisitions that happened during that time, and I got to be involved in doing some assessments on the contact center space for those contact centers that were part of those acquisitions, and and you know got me really into more understanding more of the tech work and realizing how much involved and knowledge I had already generated off of that technical um, hardware, software products, and then looking at what tools are in the market that we can use and implement that will improve performance. Whether it's QA AI platforms or dialer platforms or workforce stuff or things of that nature. And other, marketing. The work I'm doing here is a lot of marketing compliance related things. So work like that, we're doing those kind of things. And so part of my role is also now involved in supporting other divisions that are also in the contact center space that I'm not responsible for, but helping them with the technical pieces of the software and the products that they run, and then bringing those in and kind of acting as a in-house consultant around those kind of things, which I really like because it helps me to, one, keep a pulse on what's going on in the space, and then kind of uh, make sure that what we're doing and what's available, we tie those up together, and I can see directly, kind of as a consultant slash like a player coach. I guess it's
Right.
kind of the way I think of it, as like I'm an operator in the center, but I'm also helping myself by looking at those products versus, like, if I was just the operator, I might not even pay attention to what's going on in that, right? So I spend a
Absolutely.
lot of time in that and looking at different tools and those and whatnot that we can bring in. But yeah, and that's brought me to this place. So in 2026, vice president of operations for Quinn Street over contact center, and started out as insurance sales agent taking phone calls. I just know that along the way, how did you say, oh, how'd you get to where you are? I said, I was joking with a friend of mine. It's like, I took a left versus a right at some point, or answered the right question at some point, and that kind of led me down this road. There's some luck involved in any of this stuff, but you have to have an aptitude. For sure, I'm going to say this right now, for sure, never thought I would be working at this point in my life, but I really like it. It's fun. You get to meet a lot of great people. There's a lot of good and bad stress along with it, but you're always involved with the customer or the potential new client to some degree,
Yeah.
which I think is really cool. And you get to impart a great deal of um, positive outcome when it comes to that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the journey from start to finish. It's longer than I probably thought I was going to go. That's that. That's my background.
No, that's perfect, man. Yeah. So I mean, literally, you did just about everything in a contact center, right? Um, yeah, and that's exactly what we look for. I mean, that's why we do this, right? You started in the mailroom, man, on the phones, smiling and dialing. Yeah, and yeah, worked your way up. I always find operators, true operators, understanding the whole operation and tying it all together makes all the difference in the world. When I got pulled into software, I had already opened up or ran a handful of centers by that age. Yeah, and that's the beauty. I always talk about it, the contact center MBA program. There is nowhere that I can possibly think of where in your mid to late 20s you can have, double digit direct reports with triple digit indirect reports, learning KPI management, operational management, motivation, HR, and all the things it takes to run a contact center effectively. And it's tying all those things. Yeah, it's exactly what you talked about.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
So
there was, when you say it like that, yeah, there was some fake it till you make it moments in my career for sure. Like, and I'm not going to name those times just because there's people probably watching this that would be like, hey, I remember that. Um, but you can't, it's impossible to know how to do everything when it comes up. Right. And if you just know how to do everything when it comes up, you're probably ready for some new challenges. Right. I mean, that's
absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
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 So, I mean, yeah, you're
What the
right.
hell did I know about running Europe, Middle East, and Asia when I was coming out into software? I don't have an MBA. I mean, I don't even have a college degree. I literally worked as an agent until, through trainer, through supervisor, through manager, through director. Yeah. And then I got pulled
Hmm.
into software but I'll tell you one thing, all the stuff I learned in contact centers during that whole growth phase, for me, has served me better than anything else in software. Because of course, all the software companies I've worked for are all contact center related technologies, right, or services. But nonetheless, you can't replace that knowledge and understanding of what it's like being an agent, a leader, a person that operates a contact center. You just can't replace it. Um,
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. So, I mean, and one other thing you commented on, I'll just double click on was, uh, when I got into that world, I had gone to, junior college and got a 2 degree in junior college and kind of then that's, my life, some life things where I needed to work and didn't go on to to get my 4 degree. One of the amazing things about the company I worked for Nationwide was back then they had an education reimbursement program of like the old school kind where they just basically, so I went to school, at a university while I was working when I was talking about when I was in the workforce side of things on campus after work, my family very young and finished my degree that way and the company paid for that. And I feel like, to be honest, I feel like, that's a real, that, although it's not necessary, I don't think completely, because a lot of degrees aren't necessarily always applicable. I would not say that my degree was actually applicable as a business degree. I would not say it was completely applicable, but that was an action I took during a time where I needed to do it. I think it helps. It helped, and it just also, if anything, it helped, um, you know, create a positive reflection for myself of things that you can do. And I tell my kids all the time, listen, you can do anything for a year. Like if you take a job where you're like, oh, I gotta work overnight or I gotta work this crappy thing or I gotta do this thing, you can do anything for a year. Just start. And it's soon enough. You only have 5 months left and soon enough you have, oh wow, I'm done. And by the way, I like it, or whatever. And so, that's a shout out to them as an organization. That was anyway, the journey was amazing. Each step of the way, Fred, I feel like was accretive to moving forward for me. Like there was many times where I could have gone here, or I could have gone there, and I chose a path that seemed maybe different than maybe the norm. And I look back now, and all of my contact center leadership roles were tied to new startup type things. So the company, I started the insurance sales side of things, or the workforce, or I started a standard and I implemented some tools, or started it, Quinn Street, and they're starting it in their contact center and growing that. That's kind of my background. I realized, several years back, walking into an existing corporate contact center to get certain numbers, the juice is in a different place for me, I think. So
yeah, yeah.
that's kind of where I realized I just naturally gravitated there without really realizing it. But anyway, a little
You and I
extra.
are the same. You need the challenge and you need to learn. And if you get bored, I won't speak for you. You tell me, but I suspect you're the same way. If you get bored, that's not a good thing for you. I need to be actively challenged. And that's why what I do
Yeah.
always a challenge.
Yeah.
Always
Well,
something new.
hey, just keep things moving so you don't get bored. New things, new activities, new projects, whatever, personal or work, right? Like you got,
Yeah,
like there was a time in my transition when I was between Nationwide and Glen Street where that was a different environment for me. It was uh, uh, they just had a different, they were great people, great core company, just a different culture. And I found that didn't suit me really. I met one of my best friends now still. He's a consultant at a big consulting firm. We work together and we still talk every week practically. And just the people I've met along the way. Like I can't replace the mentors. The the uh the organic mentors. I love mentor programs, but organic mentors, like it's not like you can't create that. You have to find that, and you have to be lucky enough for those situations. And that I try and do the same thing with people that I work with. I try and
absolutely.
support and help the teams and that I work with in a mentoring way, so they can then go and pass that forward too. Because I mean, otherwise, how are you passing? It's not like it's carpentry where you need to have a you know a, what you call it,
Apprentice.
apprentice. Yeah, apprentice. When you're starting out, you're kind of an apprentice in the space. You're learning, and and sometimes when you've been around for a long time, you forget a lot of things that you've learned until someone needs to know that. And then you're like, oh wow, I know
Yeah, here
kung
it
fu
is.
already.
Yeah, let me pull this out of the back pocket.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the
yeah,
same way. And I find I get asked a lot. Will you mentor? How do you mentor people? How does that work? How did you find your mentors? This conversation comes up with a lot of younger people. A lot of younger guys in the gym nowadays. I get asked this a lot when they find out what I do. What I always tell them, it's nobody mentored me because I asked them. I didn't come up and say, "Hey, please be my mentor." Right? I brought them challenging things. I brought them what I thought was a solution, and I asked them for their opinion. And this was a consistent theme that I learned early from one of my leaders: is don't come to me, with your challenges unless you've thought through what you think might be the next appropriate step,
right.
and then I'll
Yeah,
talk
good
to you
advice.
about it. Right? Um, my mentors, especially the one that brought me into software, him in particular, he had the biggest impact on me overall as an executive leader. Um, but I went to him and I was like, constantly picking his brain. That's why, I constantly moved up that ladder. It's because I was always asking smart questions with a well thought through plan. And the more I heard from him, the more I figured out how to work. And then you figure out how does your mind work. And then you start bringing your own solutions that no longer sound like something they would do. And that's how you then surpass that mentor and move on to the next one
Yeah,
and the next
yeah,
one. And
yeah,
do you find the same thing?
yeah. I have to agree with you. Anytime my mentor, most of the time, my mentors in my career have been tied to uh, some project or situation that needed to be resolved or fixed in some way, and they might be a part of that team, or they might be uh, assigned to like as an executive sponsor or something, and then you get to work with them and get to know them, and pretty soon you can find out if you connect. I mean, just because you have that doesn't mean you're going to connect with someone like that. I mean, there's a lot of people I didn't connect with, but that's generally when I say organics, like it came across like, and then we just keep the conversation going. Anytime I've had a mentor, bar one time, uh, that was part of like this is a mentor thing, never really stuck. It was more just conversational. It helped in the moment. Uh, but, um, yeah, generally it's the open door to, you know, here's what I have going on. here's what I'm trying. This is not working. This is what's kind of working. What are your ideas? And then it's just a sounding board, right? And they help you with resolution on things, but you're coming up with those typically, unless it's something big and crazy. And I honestly, that's what I try and do with my own team. So although I'm responsible for my teams and that people report to me over the course of my career, I kind of still treat the situation as a mentoring thing, like whether it's a teaching situation or a coaching situation, you're coming up with a resolution so that they can go, the adage of give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish, kind of same idea. If I show you how to do it and you can do it, and then you go and do it and apply it, you're going to be able to do it. If I just gave you the number, which I can do, sometimes you have to do, here's the number, go do this thing. But yeah, go get it done. But if you're like, okay, I need to help you with this. You got a really excellent young leader on my team that I hired in right out of his MBA, probably about 6 months out of his MBA, super smart, very involved, wanting to get involved. And I coordinated getting him connected to people in the organization, some really key individuals in the organization. And I just said, listen, boot camp him. And so he spent for like a year all day, a lot of his time with those folks. And he learned enormous amounts in that. I could have not done that. I could have been like, I need this report, I need that report, fix this, fix that. And they kind of keep them at certain levels, but opening that door to opening other mentor relationships there. And that was key in that person's, business knowledge and, many others in my past. But yeah, I think the mentoring thing is you have to be careful as an individual. Obviously, I'm going to go, oh, I know Fred. I'm going to go talk to Fred and, hey, Fred, will you be my mentor? And you're like, okay, maybe. Like, what do you need? What do you want? Right? Type conversation. And maybe over the course of a period of time, you find out this person's sharp. They know what they're learning, they're growing, and I would love to help versus like, can you tell me, Fred, to help me? That, to me, that's not a mentoring relationship. The mentee is the one driving, and you're the one that needs to be the one doing it. And then you get to unlock some of the knowledge of the person that you're working with. So I've just been lucky to have amazing people in my career that naturally that worked. And I feel like a lot of that is how much work you want to put into it, how hard you want to work. Where you, just like you, we come from I'm not going to bash any generation, but I'm going to say that generation I come from is you just put your nose to the grindstone, you work your ass off, and then, it's not quite like the one before my generation, but it's like, you can get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't ever thought anybody owed me anything. And, and so that I'd say that's the harder you work, the more you show your capabilities and your intelligence and coming up with solutions to your point. I had this problem. What's your solution? I don't know. I was hoping you'd tell me. That's not going to work. Come to me with some answers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway.
All right. So, let's jump into the questions, man. So first of all, let's start with what keeps you up tonight, at night today as a contact center executive, as a leader. You can talk technology, people. What's keeping you up at night, man?
I'll just say that I'm very into my health apps, and so very little stuff truly keeps me up at night, because I pay a lot of attention. Just kidding. So things that keep me up at night are pretty much tied to, I have two things probably. Personnel issues. Like, am I doing enough? Are we doing enough? Are we finding the right solutions with people I work with? Whether that's project teams or individuals or things of that nature. That's one. Two is the technology that's that exists today. It's very the immaturity of some of the tech that's here today, and yet the desire for it to be very mature and wanting it to be mature, and people expecting it to be mature and wanting to put their eggs in that basket. That keeps me up at night, because in a contact center that uses people, uh, I mean, they're you're talking AI products and IVAs and voice agents. I mean, it's like I've heard some amazing products. They're off the chart good. Um, so those are the things that keep me up at night, and how that affects not just me. I'm not really concerned about how it affects me. I'm concerned how it affects like the global contact center space. Because if I have 100 people and I can have 100 voice agents that don't ever need to be trained, that don't ever take a day off, that don't ever need a vacation, it's, whatever. What's the reality of that? That sounds really cool. There's also unintended consequences that come with all of these things. And those are the kind of things that keep me up. They keep me up from um, there's parts of the world that are very heavy centric contact center that
Oh yeah.
they don't have a standard of living that we're used to in the US, and they rely upon that contact center industry to support, I don't even know, I would guess in the millions
Millions.
of people across, maybe
Yes.
more, tens, hundreds of millions, maybe. That could be a real issue. So yeah, that kind of stuff. But I mean, I always look at things like, what can I really affect myself? If I can affect something myself and I am not doing something where I haven't put my full effort into it, that's probably when I get like what keeps you up at night? What am I thinking about? If I can't control it,
Yeah.
there's some things that I still like control, Fred, but there's some things that I can't control. I just have to let those things go and just, live to fight another day, come back and figure it out. But I would like to see this, some more forward thinking on some of these products and what the expectations are in the future. What I thought, if you had asked me this 2 years ago, where are these products going to be in 5 years? I would have not even put them at where they are today. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
they've just they've gotten so amazing so fast
Yeah.
and capable so fast that in
Yeah.
2 years from now, 1 year from now, I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see. Podcasts maybe are just our AI persona doing these kind of things. I have no idea.
Well, there's plenty of video content out there on me that they could easily make a replicate of me.
Yeah, yeah,
I definitely think about that from time to time, but I'm with you.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, first of all, you're a person, you're a leader of humans, right? So of course you're thinking about, the impact to your people, and, and are you doing enough? I mean, those are things that every leader, if you're not worried about are you doing enough for your people internally, you probably aren't a real leader, and you need to probably do a little soul searching. That's just something naturally, even in my, small team, I think about all the time. The AI piece, everybody's thinking about right now. Well, I say that, and it's funny. I'll meet people outside of my world, just
yeah,
normal everyday people, and they've heard of ChatGPT. They probably heard of maybe one other model,
yeah,
and that is it. And then everything
yeah,
else is whatever's on the mainstream media, and 99% of it is it's going to take all the jobs. It's the end of our world. It's all the negative crap. So yeah, so when I say everybody's worried about it, I mean everybody in my let's call it the first three circles around my ring. The
yeah, right.
builders, the developers, the people's running centers, yada yada. Yeah, it's amazing how fast this stuff went from holy crap, large language models are here, to wow, but to oh my God, we just crossed the uncanny valley with the latest 11 Labs voice. It is literally crossed the valley that even to somebody like myself that listens to, I mean, I bet I've heard 500 iterations of conversational bots plus in just the last couple of years. I couldn't hear any defects that made me believe it was a bot. I
Yeah.
actually had to question, is that really a bot? And,
Yeah.
and that's the first time, just a couple of weeks ago, that's the first time I've ever had that happen. There's little nuances. You can tell it's fake empathy. You can tell,
Mhm.
the APIs didn't hit right. And then all of a sudden here we are, and it's like, crap, I have had to put out safe words to all the people that I care about to make sure that if I ever call in my voice, asking for money, that they know a keyword.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it is to that point where voice biometrics, throw it out the window. It's done. If you're using voice biometrics, throw it away. You just wasted a bunch of money, and it's that good. I,
Anybody watching's like, oh no, head in
yeah,
hand.
yeah. We got a project plan. Hopefully, if you're watching and you've got a plan to deploy it, you might want to rethink that. There's a reason two factor continues to be the winner in all forms of security. Um,
Yeah. Right.
you're
I just had talked to someone the other day about, they were talking to one of their clients about an agent's call in their center, and they were saying, is this agent an AI agent? And the person's like, no, like this doesn't even sound at all like an AI agent sounds. Like, you know, it's a little choppy. They were struggling a little bit with the script. They were like, person's like, man, you need to go and listen to some AI agents. They don't trip up. That's the value prop that comes from that. But like I said, there's unintended consequences with all decisions that we make, and so we'll see what happens with all of that. So
always is,
I
man.
definitely won't lose any sleep tonight about it, though, Fred. Um,
It's
yeah,
out of your
yeah,
control.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's exactly it. I mean, emotional regulation is the most important thing as a leader. I mean, as a man, as a human, in my opinion. But not to rep out all the Stoics and get my little banners going for this, but I mean, in all reality, I control, the way I look at it is I control what I do, what I say, and some of what I think. The I don't care if you're a Freud or Freudian believer or whatever form of psychology you believe in, but the it is real and somewhat can control it. You can't shut it down. You can't shut it off, but you can recognize the triggers, and so that just means it's yours and my job to focus on, and everybody's job to focus on what can I control and what can I make a difference on, and really double down on that. And let everything duck off a water's back or water off the back. Yeah,
Yeah, well, yep, that's it. Yeah, be the water. Did that, a friend of mine, irresistible force or immovable object.
yeah,
Which one do you want to be? You have to choose, right?
yeah.
Be the water. Be the
Be the
water.
water.
It
Always,
finds its way every time.
always. All right. So the next 5 years, if you had a crystal ball, fast forward for me, 5 years from today, we're sitting down, having a cup of coffee, or you're having a tea, I'm having a cup, whatever.
I love coffee, friend. I love my espresso, friend.
All right, all right, awesome. We're having a cup of coffee. What is it going to look like? What's our world of customer experience, contact centers? Where's that going to be? Do you think?
Yeah, I want to be hopeful that the we'll go to the AI space, that the tech there can be used to kind of augment the processes in the contact center. Take away some of the low hanging fruit stuff that you don't need to be dealing with, whether that's, whether you're using a voice agent to replace a press button IVR, or you're using that to automate tasks within your organization that you're having humans manage, and they can spend time on things that humans with advanced reasoning can do. I'm hopeful that, just like if you look at AI now, like if you put the wrong information into these prompt engines, it's just crap that comes back. But if you're good at what you put in there, you can get some really good stuff. Same with implementing it across your organization within a business. Like you got to make sure you know what you're looking to get out of it. And just, I feel like in the next 5 years, my biggest, this kind of ties into what keeps me up at night. I come from a place where the tech wasn't didn't move as fast.
Yeah.
It took years to iterate on things. Now it's taking months to iterate on things, and it's keeping up with all of it. To me, is very difficult. Whether it's, hey, it's a new company pops up over here, and this company is changing their position on this other thing. That's where I think in the next 5 years we might see some very different ways of the way our world operates within the contact center space. I mean, that's going to be obvious. How that looks, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that's going to be. I don't know that humans, until all of us become very comfortable speaking to a pure AI voice, you're going to always need some kind of agents to do something, humans, in my opinion. And we'll see. So the next 5 years, I'm hoping that I have my own AI persona bot that does a lot of the work for me, and I can focus on, very high end strategy or something. I have no idea, man. I wish if I knew that, I probably would. You'd be Elon probably at that point, right? You'd be those kind of people, crystal ballers. I'm not that smart. So
You've seen enough patterns. History. Always rhymes. I mean, it does. People say it repeats. It doesn't. But it does rhyme. There's no question
oh, yeah,
about it.
yeah, right, yeah,
So we just, like you said, it's the timeline here. That's the question.
yeah,
What used
yeah,
to take every other industrial revolution used to take decades, if not centuries. Now, it's taking. I mean, you say months. I say weeks. Iterations are, as a CEO of a company that does what we do, I literally I have to follow the foundational models. I have to follow the actual builders in our industry. I have to review the new companies. I have to talk to the builders. I have to understand, what are people doing with, the Claude bots versus the full models versus PLLMs. I mean, I spend an extreme amount of my week, looking at this technology and trying to understand where it's all heading. I can't imagine someone in your shoes running a contact center. I mean, I remember what it was like running a center. It was putting out fires 24/7.
yeah, yeah, right, yeah,
But back then, when I was running centers, there were 10 players in the market, right, that actually provided
yeah,
the technology.
yeah, exactly,
Now there's
yeah,
1,000 conversational bots, plus 200 CCAS, plus 50 WFM conversational analytics, and I could go on and on with the categories,
yeah,
let alone the
yeah.
actual suppliers. Um,
Yeah, because I mean, you're right. The fire, the reality is the fires they're still there. I mean, you're still going to have to QA the bots. The bots are going to have to QA the bots. I mean, no matter what we do, because unless the bots are talking to bots and they can tell on themselves and do whatever that they can tell. Oh, I'm hallucinating on this or whatever. They're not going to do that, right? But the fires are just more spread out and a little more smoldery, right? They can spark up, and new companies that enter the space are always shiny, and they're always shiny objects. You just still always have to do due diligence with this stuff and see how it really is going to impact you down the road versus getting too sucked into the noise versus the signal, and know that it's really important to still use a lot of um, common sense in the way you think about some of this stuff. But people smarter than me will help figure that stuff out, and maybe it'll get, maybe it'll be really great. We'll see. I'm looking forward to it.
Optimist. I'm an optimist,
Yeah,
but I think if you've known me long enough, I'm also very much a realist. Yeah, that I understand human nature. What I'm worried about is the messy middle, right? Right now, we're just starting to see the impacts. From a macro side, the jobs numbers finally took a negative hit just last week. Last week, yeah, last week. Um, and those things are going to continue no matter what. You can't get out of the way. We can't stop it because we're literally in a race. The United
yeah, right.
States, versus China. Um, and so is the underlying code Mandarin or is it English? That's the big race right now. We can't slow down. But once you hit AGI, all bets are off. We all know it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
um, there's the self learning. Is pretty much there depending on who you talk to, but it's pretty damn close. Um, yeah. I mean, all this stuff is shifting so fast, but I still see it at the base level. I mean, we've talked about this countless time offline. People, processes, and technology is what matters right now. Whether you're bringing in the most advanced AI or, um, and most companies aren't even ready for what I would call 2-year old AI. Let alone the modern stuff. And then there's balance of what do you build, what do you buy, and yeah, pressures from boards, because we all as executives have fiduciary responsibilities, whether we like it or not. That's the job of an executive. Uh, you know, but then there's risk and compliance and all the changes and nuances. It's not the same. When I was running centers, man, things were pretty easy all in all.
yeah,
Of
yeah,
course, all
right.
we had was green screens back then. You want to talk
Yeah,
about data. Um, you know,
yeah,
we were punching down twisted pair to the agent desktop, to a little black. Do you remember the little black boxes? And if you were lucky, you had the little red mute button on the box.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that was wired straight from traditional telephone line right to your headset. Um, yeah,
Crazy.
yeah,
How
different
times
time.
have changed.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
how times have
All right.
changed.
So one last. If you were sitting down and talking to somebody who just became an agent, a supervisor, junior level leader, or even yourself when you were younger, right, coming into this phase, what would you tell them? What would be the Tyler ism that'll help them kind of start to head down the right path?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think too much about like I said, I shared with you before offline. I don't think too much about you know where I've been and how I've gotten here.
Yeah,
But I would say for anybody getting into the space, I think most people who take jobs in contact centers don't think about it being a career. They start it as like, I'm in college, I'm trying to get maybe a second job, maybe it's um, whatever. You're just filling in gap for a period of time. The reality is the contact center has an ecosystem of positions that is vast. Like to your point, you can be, you can be in your mid 20s and have direct reports and indirect reports. And you're not doing that when you're working for the state government when you're 20, if you're 25, right? Or you're not doing that working for a law firm necessarily if you're an intern or whatever, right? So there's a lot of positives with that. I would say, I was going to talk, I would say take risks in your work when you're young. Look at what you're looking for. And as you expand, look for that specialization. But don't be afraid to take on things and fail, because failing is where you learn. You don't, I played a lot of sports in my career, different sports, and I'll just use this as an analogy. I learn literally nothing when I win something, nothing, almost. Wow, maybe you did something good. When you lose, man, that's when you learn the real stuff. So when you take on jobs and you have a project and it goes perfect and you're like, hey, look, we made a project, versus like it all hit the fan and now you got to figure out how to do it. And maybe your part was the problem that made it hit the fan and you got to figure it out and you got to work to do it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail and then try again and, take responsibility for that and, just keep working until you succeed, because I know it's easier said than done when you look back on it and you need an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So I would say this too. I mean, I'd say to tell my kids this too. Raise your hand when opportunities exist. Don't wait for someone to pick you. Raise your hand and get in the mix. And sometimes good things happen when you do that. And then don't. And I would say too, be careful about. I mean, I have a lot of things, I guess. Be careful about what wall you put your ladder on.
Oh yeah.
And if you climb that ladder without thinking too much about it, you're gonna get somewhere.
Huh?
It may not be the place you really want to be at the top of the ladder, but that's just a lot of forward thinking. And I've just been really lucky with the companies I work for. Thought a lot about it. Great people. I think there's an element of luck, but I think you have to apply your own luck sometimes and just work hard. Work hard. Don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah. Yeah. Luck is only as good as you're willing to take advantage of it, right? I mean, just because something comes in front of people, everybody has opportunities set in front of them. Not
Yeah,
everybody takes them.
that's true.
So
Yeah,
I absolutely believe that luck is a thing. However, you know, if you're not prepared and you're not willing to take it and take
yeah,
advantage
yeah.
of
That's
it,
right.
then
Yeah,
don't mean anything. And I agree.
that,
I've been lucky a lot too. I fell into machine learning 14 years ago, but I was willing to take a leap and chase after the people and partner with them and build something and take a risk. And, even though I failed, I learned a lot. Um,
yeah, right.
so I appreciate it. It's funny. I knew you would have a bunch of things to share. Yeah. You haven't been, you're not the first one that said, oh, I don't have much to say. I don't think about that much. And then have a bunch of insights. It's
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah,
Try, do the hard shit, say
yeah,
yes, and then figure
yeah,
out how to do it.
yeah.
Take your failures and you turn them into learnings.
Mhm.
And what else? There was one more, right? Yeah, the ladder. Your
Like the ladder.
pick your
Yeah,
wall. Pick
pick
your
your
wall.
wall. Yeah, because you're gonna get somewhere. You just
Always.
better be ready. You're always gonna get somewhere. Just put some thought in it before you take that first step.
Yeah. Well, dude, I
Yeah,
appreciate you. Thank you for
yeah.
finally
Thank you.
coming on. We finally
Yeah,
got the episode done.
I know. I'm still high maintenance. I'm still high maintenance. Yeah, I
You
appreciate
are.
you. I appreciate you, Fred. Like I love the origin, the journeys, and the Journey podcast. I think it's amazing. I love what you're doing with it. I hope it inspires new leaders in this space. I feel like this is an industry that gets a bad rap a lot of times, and I feel like people could really you can create a lot of good leaders in the contact center space. And so yeah, I hope podcast does that for people pick up on that, and glad to
Yeah.
be here.
Just I appreciate it, man. Just have an impact
Yeah,
on one person. That's all.
yeah.
Yeah, make someone's life a little bit better, man. So all those at home, appreciate you watching. Tyler, again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next contact center journeys.
Thanks again, Fred.